He actually is a rock star, literally. An actor, a comedian, a doctor, an anesthetist. I did say he wears many hats. It's known to confuse them sometimes. But his comedy skills are not linked to his anesthetic skills. Voice artist and compeer, collector of Star Wars and Bond memorabilia, and on a personal note, a dear and loyal friend. Dr. Sean Amalsekun, may I have you out here? I'm going to hand over this session to him as he engages in a conversation with Lankan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a veritable literary feast for you in the persona of Dr. Anthony Joseph, who served as the illustrious chair of the judging panel at this 31st Gratiaen Prize. Dr. Anthony Joseph could be the very definition of a modern Renaissance man. He's an award-winning Trinidad-born poet, novelist, academic, musician. He's the author of 5 poetry collections and 3 novels, which I have been ensconced in for a couple of them. As a musician, he has released 8 critically acclaimed albums, as a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and a lecturer in creative writing at King's College London. And as Adam mentioned, you can't understate it, his 2022 collection, Sonnets for Albert, won the T.S. Eliot Prize for Poetry 2022 and the Ocean Booker's Prize for Caribbean Poetry. Anthony Joseph is a radical wordsmith. His work makes language elastic, stretching it to capture the sounds and rhythms of Trinidad, the Caribbean region, and the Caribbean diaspora. His works in several forms, poetry, prose, music, scholarly research, but his work is always, at its foundation, poetic. Poetry is the art of considering the present. Like music, the performance aspect of poetry forces one to be alert to the possibility of the moment, to experience and capture it fully. So, let's do that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, performing On the Move and supported by Vihanga and Pasan on the rhythm section, please give a warm welcome to Anthony Joseph.
Hello. I hope I can live up to that introduction. So, yeah, this piece that I'm going to do is, I thought I'd do this because it talks about Trinidad and the culture of Trinidad and the sort of eclectic nature of Trinidad. I don't know if anyone here has been to Trinidad or the Caribbean, but when I came into Sri Lanka yesterday, I felt a sense that I was at home because the humidity is very similar, the weather is very similar, the people actually look quite similar. So it's a really comfortable feeling, and we have a lot of, I guess, historical relationships as well. We both endured similar histories. So this piece speaks to that. So, like bone, it was July, hard road, maybe Marseille, up the mountain, acrobatic, it was skin, it was hidden, back home, it was written, Port Spain, we walked along, heavy light, perceptive, heavy rain, what was that? That was thunder, wind that blew us out of sync, scenic time, it was hot, a kind of trip, Caribbean, it was pulled back, it was London, we were sailing, we kept on it was midnight, we were moving, Clipper River, insect mode, it was a lie, no it wasn't, it was more like a long con, like love as an anchor, pulls us under, it was repeated like a trick, like a hymn, like a dirge, like a bell, it was gravel, rugged pitch, a blow that left the wounded water, wild beauty. fever, fever grass. It was patchouli, orange blossom. It was something like madness. It was painted with desire. Cactus heat, so elastic, rhythm patient, glossolalia. It's very talking. Once, when freedom had meaning like organs of heat in the evening, my body held vibrations of the Caribbean, and we let bled that excess negritude of being. But the past didn't last long. It grew tired and we wept in forests where black myth was painted in that acrobatic silence, and now my soul still holds the aroma of anguish. Do not gaze not too long upon the past. It's so dissonant, bass notes, sky church, steady dying. We were waiting to burst out of human life, heading east to the ocean. Rugged steep, too shallow, too drowning. We were coming back from drowning. Manzanilla, old plantation. History was all around us. It was fluid, rhythm nation. Make you move on the move. So shallow is this memory that it pierced me like Chihuahua and arrowhead, drowned in double-beaten gold-skin drums from dust and plywood junctions where bliss stroke sparkles there. Near sea-silled and jellyfish near Port Authority car park where aliens still landed to this dreamscape, contemplating the road. Our verge of memory, split with K like Candle Day, in a place where everything happens at once. I want to give these guys some love and thanks. And the drum, the sizzle, and the bass. Okay.
Well, Anthony, let's get you up on stage. Can we have another fabulous round of applause for, of course, we have Pasan and Vihanga from Music Matters who came through and gave us some really sweet grooves on that. Thank you very much. That was fun. We should keep them on, don't you think? Yeah, we should keep them on. We've got a few more grooves we could do before the night is out. Thank you, Anthony. That was spellbinding, man. I'm telling you. I really want to, over the next week, we haven't got lots of time, but I'm trying to maximize it because Anthony has got such a, and Ramya got me into it because she said, "You'd be fabulous with this." I heard of who I am, but let's see. Because Anthony's, the scope of his work is just so vast that I didn't know where to start, so I just started listening to his albums, reading his work, and I think he's been in my head for the last month. I think he's like the Phantom of the Opera. He'll be singing songs in my head for the foreseeable future. But I too am a doctor, but of a different variety. But I think us in the medical fraternity also consider ourselves closet artists, if we like to. But my sort of into your work was as a musician and through your music, and especially with the Spasm Band and his work with them. It's fabulous. The rubber orchestras, and it's really, really in my head. And I think you've got a new album coming out very soon. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So, and you work with the bass guitarist, Andrew John. Yeah. Andrew John is actually, I work with a bassist and a very overqualified lyricist myself, who happens to be in the audience tonight. He is none other than the Booker Prize winning Lankan. So, we jam on Thursdays, so if you're free, you can just join us and we can pull out a jam. But, so the Spasm Band, it came to being after, as an extension of your first novel, The African Origins of UFOs, is that right?
Yeah. Actually, when I went to the UK in '89, I went with the intention of just doing music. I didn't really know what a poet was. Growing up in Trinidad, I really didn't have an idea, but I knew what musician was. I knew who Jimi Hendrix was. I knew who Prince was. So I thought, that's what I want to do. So I got to London and I started a band and did that for a year or so, a couple of years. Didn't really get anywhere, and then I started sort of realizing that I was actually a poet, sort of focused on that. And then writing for a few years, and I started working on a novel, which was The African Origins of UFOs. I'd long given up hopes of being like yourself, being a rock star. I'd given up. And
you're plenty of rock stars.
In the writing of that book, I decided to do some readings with just a djembe, a drum and a saxophone. And we just started playing, doing readings with that, without any sort of ambition to be a music thing. But then we did a little demo, put it up on MySpace back in the day. And a guy in a record label in France heard it and signed it up, and that was the beginning of the band. I put this band together called the Spasm Band, which the Spasm Band comes from actually Louis Armstrong talking about his childhood in New Orleans, and there were, before jazz, there were these bands of kids that would play bones and stones and sticks and pans, and they were called Spasm Bands. So that's the whole history of the Spasm Band.
So has music always been like an extension of your work? You can't stay like nailed to the page. You need to sort of jump off it. Is that?
Yeah. Well, as we were talking earlier, Walter Pater says that all art aspires to the condition of music. Even poetry, even literature, any type of literature, any type of art aspires to the condition of music. The condition of music is an immediacy. It's immediate. You don't have to do anything. You just have to experience it. And all art kind of wants to have that quality. So I came to writing poetry through music. I was in Trinidad. I was a young child growing up in Trinidad, and I was really fascinated by song lyrics. Just listening to things on the radio, songs on the radio, and the lyrics of songs. And I started writing my own songs. I started writing my own lyrics to songs, and that became a poetic practice. So there's always been that connection for me.
Yeah, so art is art only when it has interaction with something else.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Maybe, it's a touch somebody else. But lyrics, from a songwriter point of view, and also as like musical theatre, one thing the difference between poetry and lyrics, that poetry by itself has such a strong sense of meter and rhyme, and it's very rich in itself. But it sometimes just really doesn't need to be supported by music, as opposed to lyrics, which by themselves are pretty thin, and just needs that support. Or in terms of opera, you can take one word like vincero and stretch it out for like 2 years, because the music does the drama, not really the words. But do you consider poetry and lyrics to be interchangeable?
Not for me, because I only write poetry. I can only do that, and even when I write lyrics, the lyrics are poetic, they're poetry. I can't have a separation between the two. I just have an approach. I think being a poet means you have a particular approach to language, regardless of what medium you use. If I'm writing a letter or an email, I'm thinking, how do I phrase this in this way? How do I, I'm always conscious of the sound and how you say things. So for me, lyrics are, for me at least, it's just an extension of the poetry. The difference is that when you are writing poetry, it's a very solitary practice. You're writing not for yourself, but you're writing on your own, and you're crafting something that is, you're the only judge of it. But when you work with lyrics, you become part of a collaboration, part of a band. And I love that idea of being an instrument within a band. So the lyrics have to serve the music, and the music have to serve the lyrics, and there's an interaction there that is different from sitting down on my own writing poetry.
The original version of On the Move is so Frank Zappa. Yeah. It's crazy, but your new collection is coming out. It's a bit more dubstep, psychedelic. What's the brief on that?
The new album, oh man, wow, it's different. I'm working with this producer called Dave Okumu from London, and he's a bass player, but he's really into sort of psychedelic music, and he's African, so he's got a sense of Afrobeat, a bit of African music in there, a bit of psychedelic funk, a bit of jazz, a bit of prog. It's a real mixture of things. It's just music, yeah.
Actually, there was a lyric which I came across which you were surprised might be quite well known to even a Sri Lankan audience. I just want to do a test out there. And this is not your own work, this is something else. Let's see. With those little pals of mine, Ramadan and... Yeah, we've got a few. Valentine. Yeah, so from Cricket Lovely Crickets, which is the Victory Calypso from back in the 50s. I think it's credited to, the recording by Lord Beginner. But I was surprised to learn while reading your novel that actually the origins of that came on the pitch during the celebrations of that famous West Indies win at Lord's in the 1950s by Lord Kitchener himself. And it forms sort of one of the central sort of moments in Kitsch, a fictional biography of a Calypso icon. It's such a fascinating book, and I think when I said that poetry permeates everything that you do, I think this really, it was like on a bigger canvas, it's sort of sprawling, and even the cadences of the Caribbean, everything, like the elasticity of language. It really became apparent to me. I mean, could you just do a little excerpt that you think that would... I think so Lord Kitchener, before he was christened as such, he was straight old Bean. Yeah, he was called Bean.
Yeah.
Aldrin Roberts, so you don't become a Calypsonian until you get christened by one of your peers.
So, yeah, I'll read this section here, which is where Lord Kitchener gets his name, Lord Kitchener. So for people that don't know who Lord Kitchener is, Lord Kitchener was a calypso singer from Trinidad who went to the UK in 1948 on the Empire Windrush, which was this huge ship that brought about 500 people from the Caribbean into England, which was the start of, well, they say it's the beginning of multicultural Britain. It wasn't it actually wasn't, because Caribbean people had been going to the UK since the 1800s. But definitely the Windrush, that arrival that Kitchener makes in 1948 is significant. There's video of him singing on the dock of the Windrush. If you Google Lord Kitchener Windrush, you will see it. But this is set way before that. This is in the early 1940s when he is about to sing, and an older Calypsonian gives him the name Lord Kitchener. An audience began to gather on the wooden benches in front of the Victory Tent stage, waiting for the music to start. Tiger watching the young man that Johnny can bring to sing in the tent. He hear about him. This country bookie who pants short at the ankle, who wearing a black jacket that looked like St. Joseph Road prostitute put together and buy for him because he never have no money. And you can't say you're singing in tent without jacket. Tiger watch good when the great Attila the Hun himself walked up and asked the young man to sing. Let him hear. And how the young man strained with a stutter to say, right now. Attila had to say, yes, sing and come. What key your song in? And the arena champion said, Attila watched him with compassion and interrupt. Ray minor, you mean? Is it E? Yes, give me an E. And Bean sing it. And the fiddleman stooped there in slips to catch the line. And the bassman would start to tremble. And the country boy grinning. He know he have a good tune. He fling down two verses and Attila say, okay, good. I want you to go on second before Invader. When Tiger sucked the navel from the last orange, he threw the pith over the fence in the Crapo land and he called to Bean. Young boy, come. And when Tiger call you, it is come. So it's you who sing Green Thing. People talking, they really say it's a good song. You will sing it tonight? Bean smile. Yes, Mr. Tiger, oh. So long I want to hear the damn song and I can't hear it. I have to wait for you to come to Port of Spain before I hear the song. And Tiger pray, but he have the eye on Bean. He must be saying something, and being bent his neck like Drake up to listen. Here, Tiger, what they call you? Raising his voice to its elegant tone and turning from the fence, the face being straight. My name is Roberts, Aldwin Roberts. I mean your Calypso name, boy. Well, they call me Bean. Bean? What? You is the mighty Bean? Lord Bean? Butter Bean? That is no kind of Calypso name, boy. Come better than that, man. Well, I win a Rima, so they call me a Rima champion. Tiger laugh. A Rima champion. What kind of jackass name is that, boy? That name ain't good. He laughed like the laugh been sitting in the back of his throat since morning and only now decide to come out. From now on, you must call yourself Lord Kitchener. Anybody ask you, tell them Growling Tiger give you that name. I give you that because I feel you could be a real general in Calypso. You have the height and you have the ambition. You is Lord Kitchener.
The cadence, when it goes to London, the rhythms become different. It's so evocative, and the structure of the novel, it's like a second-person narrative. It's never from his point of view, and but it's a fictional biography, so it's from interviews of actual people, news clippings, footage, and I suppose invention. And I found something really interesting when I was, and I didn't expect to find this, in the afterword. The name that I encounter was none other than the founder of the Gratiaen Prize, Michael Ondaatje, and the parallels you would draw with his own fictional biography of the Louisiana jazz player Buddy Bolden in his 1978 work, Coming Through Slaughter. And so I was just wondering, was that the first literary work that you encountered that came from a Sri Lankan-born author?
It wasn't the first work because I'd read Ondaatje's poetry before that. But it was his first novel that I read, yeah. And I read it primarily to see how he dealt with a historical figure and how he invented the life that wasn't there. He says it in interviews as well that the information on Buddy Bolden's life was so scant that he had to invent a lot of stuff. So I read it for that, and it's one of my favorite.
One of the possible versions of his life.
Yes. But I think with Kitchener there was a lot more information available that I could draw on because I could really research, and I spoke. A lot of people were still alive that knew him, so I was able to talk to them. So there's a bit of invention, but the invention is, history is a funny thing. If you tell the events that happened, there's a truth to that. And as long as you don't change the events, it's fine. But how you tell it, you can embellish. Yeah. You can kind of mess around with it, yeah. As long as you say, for instance, Kitchener arriving on the Windrush in 1948. The footage is black and white. But I wanted to know, well, what color was his tie? What color was his suit? I can make that up. Because I'm not changing the fact that he arrived wearing a suit, but I'm changing the fact that he was wearing a blue suit. Yeah. You see what I mean?
London is the place for me. Yeah. So I think that's just among sort of the parallels that you find. So going back to Michael Ondaatje, I think he's among the most famous among our diasporic poets who are writers who have stepped out. And there was an interesting observation in your talk with Cabraal Braithwaite about that you consider yourself more a writer from the Caribbean rather than a Caribbean writer, before Braithwaite opined that, well, you don't become a Caribbean writer until you leave the Caribbean. Yeah. So I was wondering, do you think there's a difference about writing about your country when you live in it, as opposed to when you've left it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot, we can talk about that a lot, but I'll try to be succinct about it. I think it's about, I think nostalgia plays a large part in it, and the way you use nostalgia in writing is a way in which you kind of manipulate the emotions of the audience, and it's very effective. And you can only get that feeling of nostalgia if you're away from the thing, if you're missing it, you know. And it tends to be that, at least for me, I became more of a Trinidadian the longer I stayed away, because the things that made me Trinidadian and the things that I remember are the things which I held on to even tighter, because they were going, they were disappearing into the past. So I had to hold on to all the memories and all the food and all the scents, and, you know. So you become more, it becomes more concentrated in you. So I think that's why not hindsight, but distance is really important. You know, you can't see the mountain when you're standing on top of it. You can only see the mountain from the plane, you know.
Or like when Kitchener's flying back and he sees his island and he's not sure how big it was because he was always inside it.
Exactly.
Only when he was outside he could see how big it was.
That distance, yeah, you have to. You have to. I tend to write in hindsight a lot better as well, a lot easier, you know, after an event where you have time to reflect on it. Reflection is a really important thing for a poet, I think, especially.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the sights and sounds and smells, and even you mentioning that coming to Sri Lanka was so reminiscent of being in Trinidad. One thing that struck me is so many similarities between the Caribbean and Sri Lanka, I guess, aside from the fact that we're an island nation, we're a big cricket mad, and you have calypso and we have baila, and you know, we have the sights and the smells and the sounds, and there's this colonial and post-colonial sort of shadow that still looms over us. In your recent encounters with like a plethora of singularly Sri Lankan work, I was just wondering, have you found any parallels with the Caribbean experience?
Yeah, you know, one thing I find fascinating, well not fascinating, but it was beautiful to see was the attention to the senses. You know, in a lot of the, especially in a lot of the fiction, the poetry as well, that I had to read, there was a lot of concentration on the smell of things, the food, flowers, descriptions of landscape that were rich, really evocative detail. Like, you know, sometimes you read a whole paragraph on the scent of something, you know. And that is common in Trinidad as well, because there's something about living on an island, a tropical island, where everything is so in your face and concentrated. And especially narrative time. Narrative time in the Caribbean, and I'm sure here, things feel like they're happening all at the same time. We don't have that sort of linearity that a lot of Western fiction has, where this happened, then this happened, then that. It's like everything is happening at the same time, you know. You're driving through the city here and it's like everything's going on at the same time. Trinidad is like that. So that was something comforting to see.
Yeah, well, we're hitting 20 minutes on the mark, and we do have to wrap it up. But I would be remiss if we didn't dip into this fabulous piece of work, because I do hope you do pick it up. It's Sonnets for Albert, which started off, as you said, I just want to quickly why you chose the form of the sonnet, and let's, you know, because it's for such a sort of modern, it's where we are now, and, you know, we've got your Shakespeare, and this goes all the way back to how you wrote the rules of it. Maybe we could just do a couple of readings from this, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
But because I don't want to let this go, I think you should definitely pick it up. It's absolutely fabulous.
I chose the sonnet because I had a really complicated relationship with my father, and the sonnet is a poetic form that lends itself to debate and argument and resolution. But the sonnet doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the imagination. So it is an English form, but it is a universal form, and it's a universal feeling as well. We see the sonnet in a lot of other things. We see it in the human body, in the way the body is proportioned. Anyway, this is Dreadlocks of Mystery. He is a sour fruit in the mouth of his third son, the barber. And yet as sweet as certain fruits are harsh sometimes, on speaking of him, my brother's smile assumes the phantom love a son has for a father. As the imagined image of the broken bridge lingers as an apparition where it once stood or should stand. But do you have specific memories of him? Things I could point, I ask. Brendan remembers in broad strokes, gust of the road, the cider boy who swooned in and out of their lives, who was broke by Sunday saying money had to find. My father has 3 children in Tobago, 2 sons, a daughter. Then another son appears from foreign, just so. Dreadlocks of mystery, kin we do not know.
Well, I think we sort of, regrettably, we could talk for hours, but we probably can't because there are people going. But I'd just like to close with just one more reading that, and I'm getting dirty looks, but I need to. Because as a doctor, this really struck out to me because in that place that we work, we encounter life and death, and it's this portal of, you know, POSG1, and when you get POSGH1, and GH is General Hospital, even I sort of picked up that, and POS is Port of Spain, and this really stuck with me. Having caught his first heart attack, the big man gives me hope to hold. He say he feels good enough to leave. He flirts with the nurses. He is in hospital on Charlotte Street, the hospital that always smells of burnt milk and disinfectant. Same hospital of first consciousness where I visited my grandfather after his blackout and sickness in 1977. After stopping by my grandmother on Gordon Street corner to buy the old bull peanut punch and Mopsy biscuit. A hospital of windows from where I watched the blue smoke rise from the morgue and turned away from my mother's bed to catch the evening flight. 2 days later, she blinked hard into cancerous death. The same ex-colonial hospital by Memorial Park, where my father once lifted me onto his shoulders so I could see the carnival pass. So I will thank you so much for your time, for being here and for sharing all your words, your music, and we will hope to hear a lot more of you, and definitely pick up one of these. It's a fabulous read from one end to the other. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Anthony Joseph, our chair of the show, and it's on with the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Sean.